Hey everyone, it's Yash with the Turn On Engagement podcast. I've got a super special guest today, Nisha Kassam, Senior Vice President, Employee Experience from Edelman. In case you don't know, Edelman is a global communications firm that partners with businesses and organizations to involve, promote, and protect their brands and reputations. And in her role, Nisha leads the Southwest Employee Experience practice, focusing on change communications, employer branding, mergers and acquisitions, change, and communications, internal communication strategy, executive transitions, onboarding programs, and culture change. It's safe to say Nisha is a ninja with what she does. She's going to tell us all about what COVID-19 did to her clients and share some really, really great best practices along the way. Stay tuned. It's all coming up on the Turn On Engagement podcast. Hi, everyone. I'm Yash with the Turn On Engagement podcast. And this afternoon, I have a very special guest joining us today, Nisha Kassam, who is the Senior Vice President of Employee Experience at Edelman. Most of you will know Edelman is a very large, very well-known communications firm, serves hundreds and hundreds of clients worldwide with all sorts of communications, public relations, marketing work. And today, Nisha has been kind enough to join us and talk about what some of the COVID experiences were like over the past year, I should say 2 years now. So it's hard to believe we're coming up on 2 years, but what was it like in the early days? And she's going to kind of talk about some specifics of, how her clients had to react, some of the things that they had to do. So we're super excited to chat with Nisha today. Thanks for joining us, Nisha.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your backgrounds. You are in is it the Houston, Texas office? Or was it Dallas?
I'm in Dallas.
Dallas.
Yeah, I'm in Dallas. I run the Southwest Employee Experience team here in Dallas and Houston. And I am originally from Houston, actually, but I spent a lot of my career in Washington, D.C. So I spent about, 17 years there. I, did my undergrad, my MBA at GW, and then I also spent a significant time in consulting. So in advisory practice, doing large scale change management projects for transformational change, and then moved on over to Edelman a few years ago to, really run the Southwest Employee Experience practice.
Fantastic! Wow, that's a great resume and a great line of experience. I think particularly the folks that start in DC and come out of DC, obviously a lot of think tanks, a lot of thought and strategy comes out of firms that are based there, and it's great to hear that you were able to come full circle and bring it home to Houston. So tell us, what was what's the story? What was it like last year? It's February, March, 2020. Everything is shutting down. What were your clients doing at the time? How did they have to adapt? What was it like in those beginning early days?
I'm trying to think back to March because it seems like a lifetime ago. But at Edelman, we were in client service, and I had a number of clients that actually reacted very differently from one another. I had clients who thought it was going to be a temporary blip, and they already wanted to plan, how people were going to return back into the office within a few months, which was kind of surprising. I had other clients who were thinking about, being in a long-term remote workforce and how to manage that workforce, and really thinking about the future of work and what that could impact and how that impacts them. And then I had some clients who were just very reactive and not forward looking, who were, kind of running it on a day-to-day level and trying to just figure out like how it's going to impact their business, and not really thinking about the impacts to the workforce as much.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So a little bit of different things for everybody. And I'm sure, at the time, we didn't know how long this was going to last, or, how long it would go on for. So I can definitely appreciate how some companies might have just said, well, this is a short-term thing and we'll get back to it. And some companies may have taken it more seriously and said, no, this is going to be a long-term thing. So what was the employee, response like? How were employees reacting?
Yeah, so I think employees really were trying to manage like the not only, at work, but all of the things that were going on the home life, right? So now you had employees who, had to set up a home office on a more permanent basis, were also teachers for their kids and their families, or were isolated, who were not interacting with anyone anymore. And so I think employees had a number of different mental health issues or mind shifts really during that time, while also being a little fearful of, am I going to have a job? Because they didn't really know how this would
Right.
impact the company that they were in. So pretty stressed out, I would say. I think employees all around were pretty stressed out.
Right, right. Were there, special initiatives that you had to undertake that, did your clients come to you and say, okay, we need to put a response plan in place and we need to communicate to our employees about what's going on? I'm curious, were there any, uses of technology or special initiatives or programming, things like that that you had to, put together in a hurry and give those ideas out?
Yeah, absolutely. So when, March of 2020 hit, I actually was a member of our Edelman global COVID steering committee as the EE lead. And so I learned a lot from, being on that steering committee on how to approach our clients about this. And so if our clients weren't asking us, we were encouraging them, right, to communicate to your employees, set up, internet sites, set up communication channels, having empathy for their employees, really understanding where their employees were at,
Mhm.
to better be able to engage them, keep productivity up, making sure that, they could still operate business as usual, even though there was a global pandemic going on. And so, yes, we had companies who were coming to us asking for help with communications and crisis planning scenarios, setting up virtual engagement ideas, and how do you do that? How do you manage a virtual workforce? All things and above. But we were also pushing our clients to think about those things and think about the technology that they currently had set up and where they needed to be in order to, you know, drive productivity with their workforce and keep their employees um, in the know of what was going on. At this time, employees were getting a lot of information from, their executives on what was going on with COVID as well, right? I think
Mhm.
employees were reading the news, watching the news, hearing from their friends, hearing from their doctors, but they were getting a lot of information from their own company to see what was going on with COVID, what was the reaction, what was the response, what was their company doing in order to help the response, and the efforts as well. And so I think their information that they were getting just expanded.
Right.
Um,
Right. Wow. Yeah. And I mean, I remember at that time, there was so much information coming from so many different directions. And some of the folks that I've talked to in this podcast series, have mentioned things like, information overload,
yep.
even false information, and not knowing which channels to trust, where information is coming from. So, I know a lot of companies in the past 2 years have now put these appropriate channels into place and, are prepared, for the next global event or whatever else might happen. So I know it's been a learning lesson, for many companies and even for thought leaders like yourself that are doing it at the consulting level and that are actually preaching this stuff. I'm sure you guys have, come up with so many things at Edelman now that are best practices that you benchmark that you are now telling your customers, your clients, and maybe even, new ones that you might onboard, let's say next year of, look, here's how we weathered the storm, and here's what you should be doing, or here are the things that you at least need to start thinking about right now. just to be protected for the future. Um,
Absolutely. Yep.
I'm
And just to touch on that, and it's changed over the past 18 months, right? So how you're right, communication was a communication overload in March, April, May, June. People were trying to figure out how to engage with their employees. So I don't know if you've ever attended like a virtual happy hour
yeah,
or,
yeah,
all of those like virtual touch bases or one-on-ones, or just those types of like virtual social interactions with your coworkers. And if you've noticed, that's really died down in the past year.
hmm,
People have Zoom fatigue. People are don't have time to attend like a virtual happy hour anymore, and they don't really see the point in that, to be honest. And so you do have to continuously think of new ways to engage your workforce when you are virtual and when you're actually moving back to a hybrid environment.
right. That is a great point because I feel like in the beginning of the pandemic, when we started doing these virtual happy hours and virtual meet and greets and things like that, there was a novelty to it, right? It was just kind of like, oh, this is new. This is kind of like, wow, it's weird, but it's fascinating and interesting that we have to do it this way. And then I wonder if we just all got fatigued, right, over
Yeah.
time and just said, you know what, like, how many of these are we going to do every single week? And it's kind of boring. And you're right. You constantly have to mix it up and come up with new ideas.
Mhm.
You touched on a great point there, specifically as we're going back into maybe hybrid. I know a lot of companies are starting to plan for January, February, bringing their workforces back 2 days a week, 3 days a week, doing some sort of a hybrid model where they can still distance, people and maybe have shared office scenarios and things like that. What does that look like for your customers? Are they planning to go back? Are they going to get their
Mhm.
employees back in?
Yeah, a lot of my clients are doing a hybrid working model, and some are, like a lot of the tech companies you hear are going like fully remote.
Yeah.
There are a good number of our clients that are going back hybrid, including Edelman. We're going back hybrid to 60% in the office. And I think it varies for, each person's work style and the way they work and collaborate with each other on what that really looks like. I mean, the number one factor is, do you have the technology to support that,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
you need to make sure you have that, technology in the office that can support everyone being on video all the time, or having conference rooms, having collaboration rooms, making sure that you have the technology that can support people who are in the office, and that speaking to a group of people who are not in the office.
Right.
So I think that's the number one factor. And then of course, along with that is like the safety factor, right? How do you make
Yeah.
sure that the office is still a safe environment, and that people feel that it's a safe environment? Because the past 18 months, people feel that home is the safest environment, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I think that that is also a huge factor in having people come back. Another one is just the travel. So a lot of companies are going to start opening up their travel policies. So for 18 months, previous to my Edelman career, I was in consulting. I was traveling Monday through Thursday every
Yeah.
week. And so what does that look like in this new world where you're in client service, or you're in sales, or you're used to, this traveling, traveling for work, and 18 months you haven't been traveling, and then now you're in this hybrid environment. What does that look like to you? And do you feel safe traveling? Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Do the people you're visiting feel safe being around you, knowing that you just traveled, right? So there's going
Sure.
to be a lot of factors in play. And the fourth one I would talk about is really when you go back into the office, for 18 months, your workforce has changed,
Mm.
right? Like your
Hmm.
team who you left the office with
Yeah.
18 months ago is not the same team anymore. They may
Right.
have been laid off, they may have transitioned out or left the company. You may have new colleagues that you've never met before. And so, what does that look like when you come back into the office and you don't really recognize anyone?
Right. Right. These are all great points, and just to touch on a few of them, you mentioned traveling, and of course, you have to travel to your customers and things like that. And that's the way we always did things, is obviously face to face is better. But then over the past, 2 years, we've gone remote, and it's become almost like a habit and a standard. I'm wondering if some of the customers just say, you know what, we don't need to meet face to face. Like, we were able to do it for these 2 years this way. Can we save costs?
Hmm.
Cut down on things, because every company is obviously looking to, cut costs and things like that, and travel and all those things, particularly for consultants and, things like that is always the first thing on the chopping block. And I'm wondering if companies have now just realized, and this goes into the whole real estate question too, of like, okay, you've got fancy, real estate and maybe in a high-rise office, things like that, and then all of a sudden everybody went remote. Do we need to pay for that, right? Or should we downsize it a little bit if we're going to be doing, hybrid and remote work and people coming in and out on different schedules and things like that? So I feel like there's going to be all these questions are going to have to be answered next year. And in addition to that, the mask mandates and the vaccination mandates, right? The test or, provide proof of your vaccination, right? So I know OSHA just released some guidelines last week from the Biden administration, requiring employers with over 100 employees that they have to be vaccinated, and if not, they got to do a weekly test and submit those records. So I'm wondering, how that's all going to play out, and obviously that's obviously a political issue and varies state to state and all that sort of stuff. But these things have big impacts and ramifications for companies that have to plan for their workforces, and all the solutions that they provide in order to keep their employees engaged. Do you think some of these things are here to stay? Like, I know it's like, yeah, we're all used to doing Zoom calls and team calls and things like that. Or do you think there will come a time where, we will stop doing, and we'll use these tools as we need to, but the preference is always going to be, no, you know what, let's get back to the way life was. What's your take on that?
My take is that the future of work is really of hybrid communications and engagement and working. To be honest, I really do see that people are productive when they've been remote the past 18 months. They've proven that. Like, if you look at the stock market, or if you look at the way that tech companies reacted during the pandemic, a
Yeah.
lot of them did very well. The stock
Yeah.
market is doing very well. And I know that's not necessarily an indication of every company. However, I think you're right, where a lot of employees have proven that they are productive at home or remote, that Zoom and Teams and Slack and all those communication channels are pretty effective, and that people have been, getting their work done. And so I really do see it as a combination. I also have seen a lot of our clients doing real estate transformations in the interim, right? So
Mhm.
when they were doing layoffs and they were looking at their expenses, right? And so travel expenses came down, their real estate expenses were also looked at and evaluated on, like, what leases can we get out of, what buildings can we sell,
Mhm.
where can we move if it's not, in a city, can we move our office to a suburb?
Right.
And I think companies have been evaluating that for a long time. To be honest, I think this just accelerated that, in my
Yeah.
opinion. And a lot of these real estate agreements are 10 years, but if
Mhm.
they were able to negotiate or make any changes, I think that's what companies are currently doing, looking at their real estate portfolio. I also think, technology has done wonders, right, for interacting with people, like the Zoom and the Teams, and Teams interacting with Microsoft, and just that seamless transition to really create deliverables, work products, engage teams, collaborate, has really made everything more effective. And I think that's here to stay. I really do.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. I think for different industries it might be different. So obviously, workers that have to be there, manufacturing workers, retail workers, healthcare. Obviously, there's no zooming for that. There's no Teams for that. But I think that in order to move things along, particularly with supply chain issues and labor shortages and all that kind of stuff, and even getting into recruiting and retention, because there is a labor shortage, right? So attracting the right candidate to come to your company because you have a great employee experience where you offer things like a hybrid model, where you do also have the attractive workspaces where people can come and collaborate. Because I think there are people that are dying to go back to the office in some regards too, right? They need that sort of professional social environment, and it helps them with productivity and things like that. So I feel like it's a mix for different people and different things, but I wonder how that's going to affect recruiting, retention, trying to get your workforce engaged with your mission, vision, and values, and keep those people for the long run, versus them just saying, well, no, I'm leaving not because I don't like the kind of work that I'm doing, or I don't believe in the company. It's because you don't offer this perk or this technology or this, I can't work from home 3 days a week or 2 days a week or things like that.
Sure.
So I wonder how that's all gonna change, moving forward. And I also think a big part of it is, solving the question, as parents, you're a parent, I'm a parent, kids in school, all that kind of stuff. We had to go remote last year because our kids were home, right? And we had to take care of our children and things like that. So I think if you got to answer those questions before we can even start thinking about work and all those, those types of things as well. So all these things play a factor in there, definitely.
In
Have
all
you?
the, just to say on top of that, I think in every survey that we've done with our clients,
Yeah.
all employees want flexibility, right?
Mhm.
It's not just, you're right, being remote or being in the office. Everybody just wants the option and the flexibility that goes around their work life
Right.
and where
Right.
they're working from. And I think that's the main point here, is that because there are so many unknowns of
Mhm.
what does January look like in February, or what's next after the pandemic?
Yeah.
Is there something else? Is there going to be another scare? Or, how have people been working so productively in this remote environment? Or how more productive can people be in a hybrid environment when you do have face-to-face collaboration and facilitation, for example, or workshops that are really, done better in a face-to-face environment. So
Right.
I think, just to your point, I agree that there are so many unknowns and unknown
Mhm.
factors that I think it's important for companies to really just provide their employees flexibility.
Right. Right. It's really kind of knowing your workforce and tapping into their hearts and minds. And I would imagine that, Edelman being such a big firm, a lot of your customers may be saying, well, what do you guys do? Right? What does Edelman do? Right.
Hmm.
And looking at you guys as the example of, well, how do you guys, what's your policy, or what's the policy that you guys do? Is it working for you? Do you get those types of questions? Do they ask you, how you guys are doing it?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Our CEO, Lisa Ross, actually mandated vaccinations for as part of employment at Edelman. So all of us are vaccinated,
Uh-huh.
and we are opening our offices have actually been open, so you can go work from the office if you'd like,
Ah,
as long as you have, you're vaccinated, which everyone is. And starting in January, you can come to the office. I think the norm will probably be 3 days a week, but again, there's a lot of flexibility there in how you work, who you work with, what you're doing when you're in the office versus, not in the office, and how you're actually using the space.
mhm.
So our Dallas office is like an open environment. It has multiple conference rooms, collaboration rooms, different types of spaces. And you use the spaces for different types of meetings, different types of ways to collaborate, right, with each other, with our clients.
Right.
And so it's really using the office as a tool, right, versus a check in and a check out kind of way.
Right, right, right. Really leveraging it for what its value is versus I have to go in, or I have to be there just to make my presence be there. Yeah, that makes total sense. And I love hearing when leadership sets the example. You mentioned your CEO, doing the vaccine mandate and things like that. I also love it when leaders just kind of humanize themselves, right? And say, look, I get it, right? I've got a family, I've got, maybe I've got kids, maybe I've got situations, we're all in the same boat together, weathering the storm. Do any of your customers, your clients, or even, your CEO have those moments, have those really human moments where they could really connect with their workforce, given we're all going through this global pandemic together?
Absolutely. We actually, have newsletters that go out every other week that's do interviews with different leaders in our company and talk about, how have you been working through the pandemic? Like, what are some of your challenges? What is that um, shining moment? What are, some of the opportunities that you've discovered? How has it changed your relationships with your coworkers and your family? And
Hmm.
so, as I mentioned, I have two kids, a 8-month-old and a 2.5-year-old, and everybody on my team knows my kids' names.
Hmm.
That's definitely something that has happened throughout the pandemic, right? Like they have seen my son on a Zoom call before
Sure.
because
Yeah.
he's home and we were remote last year. And they've also, I actually went on maternity leave during COVID and came back, and everybody in my team knows, how it is being like a working mother through the pandemic, being at home full time. And so I try to share that with my coworkers and my teams and my clients, not only so they understand the environment I am in, but also that they can share and have those moments with me.
Yeah.
And so it's really about, being having empathy with your teams, with your coworkers, and really helping them understand where you're at that day and also understanding where they are at that day. So one of my team members actually emailed me this morning saying, "Oh, I have a sick child at home. So and my husband's traveling. And so I'm gonna, have to not be online today." And that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? We understand that. So I think that's a big positive coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah, yeah. I think the key word is empathy, right? It's understanding that we're all going through these moments, and giving people the room they need to breathe, and then that actually I feel like makes them then come back and work even harder, right? Because they just feel like, this is great. Like I got something, now I'm going to give something back, right? You're kind of like intrinsically motivated to work harder, right? And really get into whatever it is that you're doing inside of the company. So that's definitely great to hear. And I always ask this to anybody I interview on these podcasts, because I think in employee experience, employee engagement, internal communications, we're always trying to connect the internal employee brand to the external brand, right? No matter what the company is. Do you see opportunities for that happening to, for your clients, your customers, also at Edelman as well, where, you can take these stories, these sort of nuggets of gold, all these moments that happened over the past 2 years, and convey that to your external brand, your external marketing, so that your future customers see that and say, this is a good group of people. These are the type of people I want to work with. They get it, right? Do you see those opportunities?
We do. We actually, work with a lot of clients on an employee influencer program or an employee
Okay.
ambassador program. And so what we do is we help our clients, select certain employees within an organization who can really amplify the messaging that uh, the company has around maybe their culture or the products that they have, the services that they offer, or even their like D&I initiatives or their giving initiatives, for example. And so we are helping a lot of our clients use their employees as a voice, and helping their employees also see, take pride in their company and really talk about what the company is doing with their greater network. And so we are helping a lot of our clients do that, not only because we live in a world of information overload, and
Yeah.
and social networking is pretty big over the past 18 months, but also to help our employees like have that sense of culture, right? And have that sense
Right.
of like, I'm so proud to work here. We have this amazing initiative that has come out, or this is what we're doing for the holidays, or small businesses, or this is what we did, you know, during the pandemic. I think I heard one of your podcasts where you were talking to a woman who said that they started manufacturing like P for like,
Yeah. Yeah.
right, like they were doing like masks and things like that. And a lot of employees take such pride in having their organization do things like that, and so they want to share that with the world. And what better way to hear about what a company is doing than from their own employees?
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's one of the most effective tools that you can use. And as internal communicators, it's gold, right? Getting those stories, and, anybody can sit in a room, and creatives, and, brainstorm and come up with, cool messaging and, ideas and things like that. But when it comes from your people and your people become your brand, it's the best thing in the world. It elevates the company so far above. And I really think that there are opportunities to actually tie that to ROI. I know there've been, like Mercer and some of the other big firms have done some studies on tying employee engagement to, the bottom line and ROI. But I think the silver lining, if companies could look at everything that happened over the past, 18, 20 months, and really percolate those good stories, and, sort of use them, right? Weaponize them, and put them out there. There's a great opportunity for so many companies to, promote themselves even more just through their people.
Yeah.
And that'll just in turn help with recruitment, and, attracting more talent, future talent, and keeping talent, because it's hard to keep talent. And, it's yeah, the stock market is doing well, and, people are spending money, and, consumer demand is so high. So, for the short term, I think that's a real question for any business operator right now, is how are we going to just maintain and, supply the demand, and that starts with our people and keeping the talent in place. So yeah, I love to hear that, you guys do these, influencer, campaigns and things like that using employees.
Yeah.
That's fantastic to hear.
I think once the company knows what their goal is, right?
Mhm.
So if it's, for example, attracting and retaining talent, it's identifying, what is the criteria for selecting employees within their network, within their company, who would be the best amplifiers, right? Or
Mhm.
communicators of attracting and retaining talent, of that specific talent, maybe, that need that's there. And then you have to arm those, that set of ambassadors or influencers with like the right tools and the right templates, and then, tell them like how to communicate on social media, or what to say, what not to say,
Yeah.
some of those guidelines around that, feeding them the right content and making it as easy as possible for them to talk about the company externally. And then, of course, like setting up some metrics around that. So, like you mentioned, the ROI, it's important for the company to understand, like, what is the ROI on this? Are we getting applications from this type of communications channel, right?
Mhm.
So those are things that we do all the time with our companies, especially in this type of environment where, when you hear from an employee, that is, um, the best way to really understand a company's culture, what they do, where their future is, and
Yeah.
why they want to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this is all great stuff. Well, Nisha, I know we kind of went a little bit over here, but I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I think our audience has learned some great insights. We have a lot of SHRM members and HRCI members that tune into this podcast. So if you'd like to get in touch with Nisha, we'll include her LinkedIn profile link in the description below, so you can connect with her on LinkedIn, and keep the conversation going, because we love to connect people and peers in our community of employee experience, employee engagement, internal communication folks. So thank you so much, Nisha. I hope you had a good time talking with us today.
Thanks, Yash. I did, and definitely reach out. Happy to help anyone on this listening to this podcast.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Have a great day, Nisha. Thank you.
Bye.
Get your free vaccination tracking app powered by HubEngage. Are you looking for a free, easy-to-use platform that can track vaccination status, record testing results, and screen for symptoms to keep your workplace safe? Many employers are wondering how to manage showing proof of vaccination or providing a weekly negative test result. This process could be cumbersome to set up and manage if it's not automated. At HubEngage, we'd like to help businesses like yours with this. We are offering our employee surveys platform for vaccination tracking at no cost. Yes, you heard it right, for free, to help you manage this process. It's super easy to set up. Use our templates. Employees can update you on a weekly basis, download QR codes. Employees can scan those QR codes and submit forms. We send you an alert when any employee reports a positive test. You can embed or publish this free vaccination tracking app within the HubEngage employee app, Microsoft Teams, Workplace by Facebook, Slack, SharePoint, or any other HRIS employee communications platform. Visit hubengage.com and get started for free today.